It's Monday, and that so happens to be the day that I like to talk about monsters. I'm Geoff Arbuckle, and this is Monster Mondays, presented to you by Film Seizure. Now, this week I've got a little bit of a different type of monster movie. It's related to the Godzilla series, but I don't know if it would necessarily be counted as a monster movie, although there is a giant robot in it. This week I am talking about The Mysterians. The Mysterians was 1957. It was directed by Ishiro Honda, who had done Godzilla before this, as well as Rodan. And for this movie, he really kind of wanted to do something a little bit more real direct sci-fi, not necessarily the type of stuff that he had been doing previously with the kaiju movies, but something just a little bit more straightforward sci-fi for the most part. Like I said, there is a giant robot monster in this. Not the robot monster from Robot Monster that is just a gorilla suit with a diver's helmet on it and some TV antennas sticking out of it, but an actual giant robot. Now, before we get too much into that, it should be noted that the Japanese name of this movie, which I'm not even going to try to pronounce, but it literally translates to Earth Defense Force, which is kind of interesting because it is something that will ultimately play a part in some later Godzilla movies in the Heisei and the Millennium era. But this features a character, or a creature, I should say, that's a giant robot. It's the first and really the only appearance of Mogra in the during the Showa era. Now, Mogra actually is named after the Japanese word for mole. And it kind of makes sense because when he makes his appearances in this movie, it's from basically kind of burrowing through the ground or through a mountain or what have you. Now, after the Mysterians, Mogra appeared in various Godzilla shows that were produced in those early Showa era. Some of it was like a cartoon. There was like a live action TV show, I think in the 70s, I think it was. But he would appear there. I say it would appear there. Then later in the late 80s, Mogra appeared in Godzilla's first Nintendo Entertainment System game, so NES game. And that game was called Godzilla Monster of Monsters. It's such a bizarre title, but it's actually kind of perfect. I own the game. I've played it. I have fought Mogra many times. Mogra was one of the regular bosses that would appear in this almost chess-like game that you would have to move from one like little hexagon to another. It's almost like there's various board games that you do that in nowadays. But another character that appeared quite often in that was a squid-like creature called Gezora. Now, Gezora appeared in the movie Space Amoeba that I think was late 60s or early 70s. But Mogra and Gezora actually were not in Godzilla movies. They were just Toho characters. It wasn't until Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla that the Heisei era Mogra, which was not a villain, but it was actually used by Earth, appeared ever again, or actually appeared directly into a Godzilla movie. And Gezora only appeared in archival footage in Godzilla Final Wars as kind of the big farewell to the kaiju in 2004. But so it was kind of interesting. It's like, here's a character that I know who Mogra is, and I could probably get Gezora too, even though I've not seen Space Amoeba yet. But I had never seen the Mysterians before now. I just knew who Mogra was, because if you go if you go deep enough in checking out what other Toho creatures are out there, you will eventually find mention of Magura. He's kind of this big boxy robot dude, and I've got more to say about that a little bit later. But this movie being a sci-fi movie about alien visitors and invaders, spoiler alert, it actually opens with this really traditional Japanese ceremony in this tiny little village out in Mount Fuji area. And we meet an astrophysicist that goes by the name Shirashi. And he's telling a friend of his, and the friend of his name is Atsumi. And Atsumi, and I don't know if he's just an astronomer or if he's an actual doctor, but Joji Atsumi is kind of like the main character in this, but he is Dr. Shirashi's or Professor Shirashi friend in the beginning of this movie, and Shirashi is saying that basically he's decided he's no longer going to get married to his girlfriend, who is friends with Atsumi, and that he plans on staying in this little village for a long time, to which Atsumi is a little bit surprised because you get the impression that they are more city-like people. And basically he's kind of acting a little bit strange and a little bit different. And there is a fire that is seen in the like on the outskirts of town that's like on the tree line of this forest that surrounds the town. And it's this point that Shirashi he knows what's going on, but he can't tell anybody what's going on. He's trying to keep people away from that fire because he said it might be a little bit too dangerous. And sure enough, people from the village go into that fire, and all of a sudden, they discover that the fire is very strange because it's burning from the roots up and not the tops of these trees. So it's obviously coming from underground. But they get trapped and they get killed, presumably. Well, the next day, Atsumi goes to see Dr. Adachi, and Dr. Adachi is basically Shirashi and Atsumi's like mentor. And he's actually a character that's been in a handful of Ishiro Honda's movies and a lot of Toho movies. In fact, he was in a handful of Kurosawa's films. But he is just one of those characters I quickly recognize as like, oh, that's the guy from Mothra. But anyway, he is basically at that point he's telling Atsumi about this thing that that Shirashi was kind of obsessed with, and that was the idea of a planet that existed in between Mars and Jupiter. And that this isn't actually the all that bizarre of a theory. Actually, just a few years ago, the theory was kind of surfaced in reality. But and he called the planet, or the planetoid, he called it a mysteroid. So it's kind of just this object that must have been broken up or must have gotten destroyed somehow. And basically, I don't know if it was necessarily that it formed the asteroid belt, but it was essentially the concept there was that there was a planetoid in between Mars and Jupiter. And he was obsessed with this, and it was a little weird, but it was something worthy of further study at the very least. And like I said, nowadays there is a Planet V or Planet 5 that just within the last 20 years has been surfaced as that there were 5 planets that were that were basically in orbit between Mars and the asteroid belt. And I think a lot of people misunderstand that the asteroid belt is not the way we normally see it in movies. There are many miles and kilometers in between each asteroid. So there is an asteroid belt, but it's not as it's not as clustered as people think it is, or as it's usually depicted in like maps of the solar system and stuff. It's just that yes, there are a lot of asteroids there, but it's not quite as exciting as the asteroid scene in Empire Strikes Back. Let's put it that way. But anyway, back to the movie here. So they also spot Adachi and Atsumi. They also spot that there's some weird stuff going on that's happening out by the moon, and you can see things go behind the moon. So another thing that Shirashi had predicted was that there was something going on the dark side of the moon. And sure enough, it sure looks like that there's a possibility of that. So Adachi and Atsumi decide to kind of follow this journal of Shirashi's. And that's when things get a little cuckoo, when they suddenly discover that the little town that Shirashi was staying in has essentially been utterly destroyed by a landslide. But it was a little bit more like just an absolute upheaval of the entire ground in the area. And when Atsumi is out there investigating that, suddenly a big giant robot monster comes out of the mountain and starts wreaking havoc on a lot of things. And this is Magra. Now, Magra is one of the few instances in which the Japanese military actually defeats a kaiju in these movies. And sure enough, they're able to destroy Magra. And Atsumi realizes that it was made out of a material that does not exist on planet Earth. But before they can do anything more about that and really release a lot of that information out to the world, they still need to kind of follow the evidence of this study that Shirashi has done. Well, long story short, when they go back to Mount Fuji and the area there, suddenly out from the ground comes this dome-like structure. And this is the Mysterians. And the Mysterians are a race of people who did indeed live on the fifth planet from the sun that was in between Mars and Jupiter. And this is where things get weird, boys and girls. The Mysterians, this offset of the Mysterians left their planet about 100,000 years ago, and their planet was ultimately destroyed. And it was a great war that essentially, basically it had ravaged the planet and then eventually destroyed it. So this group of Mysterians moved to Mars. So they're upset with the Earth because Earth is kind of in its infancy of the space race, right? And of the space age. And, of course, the United States and the Russians have already launched things or getting ready to launch things, so on and so forth. And because of this, the Mysterians have said that, it's like there are, people on Earth are already selling real estate on Mars, and they don't have any right to do that. Let me repeat that. Part of the Mysterians' beef is that humans are selling off pieces of Mars for people to move to, and they don't have rights to that land. It's a very bizarre concept. But what's more is they say, well, we really only want a small piece of land here in Japan. Let us live here for a little while. And, oh, by the way, our race is in really bad shape. So we also ask that you give us some women. We've already got 5 that we're good for. By the way, there's some more people here. In particular, Shirashi's sister and his ex-fiance. He said that we could have them, or we're going to take them. And so now Earth has to deal with, one, are they going to give up a piece of their land to these Mysterians and these aliens? And are they going to give up the women? And at this point, Earth is like, fuck no, we're going to bomb you. Now, the Mysterians have tried to tell the scientists, like, hey, man, where you are right now with hydrogen bombs, we were there centuries and centuries and several millennium ago. So if you attack us, we're going to mess you up real bad. Earth doesn't care. They attack. They get messed up real bad. As time goes on, the Mysterians are tired of Earth continuously attacking, and they want now more land. In the meantime, we also find out that Shirashi has not died when that village got upturned. He's actually kind of thrown in with the Mysterians. And the reason why is he wants to throw in because of their advancement and because of their science. So they want to, he wants to learn from them. He thinks Earth can benefit from them. So he's happy to help them. But Earth is like, we don't want these people here. We're going to blow them up. And so really for about half the movie or more, it's all about these people trying to blow up the Mysterians, failing, bringing out more advanced technology, failing. Eventually, somebody on Earth, one of the scientists says, hey, wait a minute. What about if we build something that would reflect their heat beam that they keep firing at us and melting our tanks and blowing up our airplanes and stuff? What if we built something that would reflect that back to them? And like, oh, let's do that. And sure enough, that starts to work. And the Earth is starting to win. But in the meantime, Tsumi is trying to find Shirashimi or the girls that Shirashi's ex fiance and his sister who have been kidnapped, and he's also comes across Shirashi, who basically says, hey, I got duped, man. The Mysterians said they would give us all this stuff, and quite frankly, they lied to me. They want to take over the planet. So I got to go and blow up some stuff. Live well, everybody. I'm going to go sacrifice myself. So outside, you've got the military blowing up the Mysterians. You've got people on the inside trying to destroy the Mysterians. One of the funny things is we hadn't seen Magra for, since he got destroyed way early in the movie. However, there is a second Magra, and he burrows his way up next to one of these reflective dishes that is using the Mysterians' weapon against them. And he is able to destroy it, but the thing is, it falls on top of him, and the second Magra is instantly destroyed. It's kind of hilarious. Magra is kind of a loser. I got more to say about him momentarily, but yeah, in the end, the Mysterians try to leave Earth. They get blown up, and basically, Earth is now going to remain vigilant to protect themselves from any potential future invasions. Now, let me get to my three things I like about the Mysterians. First and foremost, oh boy, that crazy ass premise, man. They're mad because of of Earth selling off property on Mars that they don't have rights to. They are there. They just want a little bit of land for themselves, which they totally plan on expanding upon immediately. And they also want they want some women to mate with, to ensure the future of their civilization. That is an utterly bonkers premise for something that is presumably made for all ages. I don't think this movie necessarily carried any kind of certificate that said kids can't watch this movie or go see it, but it's very mundane things. They just want some land. They're mad that we're selling their land. Now, the women part, that's a little bit sleazier, but it's very bizarre because ultimately it makes it seem like that what the Earth gets mad about the most is the request for the women. And it's bonkers. It's a bizarre premise. Second, Magra, he's kind of doofy looking. Like I said, the name comes from the Japanese word for mole, which makes sense because he burrows, right? He's got a cone for a nose that is a drill. He's got these antennas that spin around on top of his head. He's got eye beams, but he's got this real boxy, like, body. And they try to dress it up with some curves and some, like, slats and stuff like that to make him not just look like a big boxy robot monster. But it really does look like when you take those old Amazon boxes that you have so many of because of all the things you've ordered and you make a little robot suit out of it. It's almost that level of what it looks like. It's doofy. He's a loser. His first one gets blown up. His second one destroys himself almost the moment he joins the battle. It's kind of stupid, but there is a charm to it because it does feel very 50s mod in the sense that that's what they could think of what a powerful monster would look, or a powerful robot, I should say, would look like. The Heisei era Magra is a lot sleeker. So it is kind of funny. And also the Heisei era Magra is what you're always going to find toys of. Every now and then a Magra toy slips out. It's not one that normally gets imported over here to the United States, but every now and then you're at a comic book convention or something, and you'll see somebody selling Japanese Godzilla toys. And sure enough, there's always a Magra there. It's not the Magra from this movie, which makes it that much more likable to me. It's always the more sleeker version from the Heisei movie. And then thirdly, there's one really, really cool aspect about this, and this is probably a cost-saving measure. Whatever it is, I dig it a lot. The Mysterians are aliens. They are invading Earth, and yes, they have spaceships. But how do they attack us? They come up from underground. That, to me, is incredibly fascinating of a detail for a story. You have these alien invaders. They're not coming from the skies. You're not saying look to the skies when you're talking about the possibility of being invaded. No, they're coming from underground, and that's a really neat idea. It's something I would like to see more of. In a way, there's a little bit of a feeling to it or familiarity to it, to something like War of the Worlds, where the Martians embedded themselves into the ground and then came up out of the ground. But this is it almost, you never really see them land. It's like they've been there for a while. And then when they make themselves known, they just come up out of the ground. And it's just a neat idea for something that you expect to see, look up for, and they're actually coming from below. So that wraps up this week's Monster Mondays. Don't forget to check out new episodes of Film Seizure every Wednesday and a new installment of Monster Mondays each Monday on filmseizure.com, as well as places where fine podcasts are found, like SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify. We're even on Amazon. You can get us through Audible there. Additionally, you can hop on over to Facebook and Twitter and follow us by just searching for Film Seizure. And while you're at it, you can head over to my website, www.bmovieanima.com, and read new text articles each and every Friday. You can also follow B Movie Anima on Facebook and Twitter by searching for just that, B Movie Anima. And hey, while you're at it, go to YouTube and follow the B Movie Anima channel, where you can find episodes of the movie hosting show that I host, of course, and get ready for season 2 of B Movie Anima, the series that starts this September. So until next week, everybody, stay spooky.